Goes knight b6.
No.
d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3 and c5 invites a Benoni defense, meaning son of my sorrow. Magnus playing it here with black, and then after this game I'm bringing you a version he plays with white against Richie Rapport. 2 for the price of 1 today. Stick with me if you love this opening, it's so exciting, and we've got some commentary reaction to come. So d5 played, the principal move. You take the space, the pawn structure changes, d6, knight f3 and g6, the approved way to play. Come on to this weakened diagonal. And now what to play as white, many moves. We're going to see one from Magnus soon. Vincent goes main line though with bishop f4, e4 also very standard. Magnus goes bishop g7, and now this is the main move, but it's a weird looking one. Queen a4 check, you know, why wouldn't you start getting your bits out over here? Well, the point is after Magnus blocks with the bishop, we get queen b3, and there's 2 pawns attacked, this one and this one. So how do you defend both? Well, queen c7 looks natural, very playable, or you can play this crazy move which Magnus selects. Great game we've got here. Now white can take that pawn, it's a very playable variation. If check, the knight drops back, just a different game. Black's going to play with the open file later. But Vincent goes to this line, takes on d6 there, and now after queen b6, this is Magnus's point. He's ditched a point, but picking up a tempo against the bishop, castling e3 and c4. So he's gaining space, gaining time on the queen side. This queen drops all the way back, supports this d pawn. We get b4 now played, driving the knight all the way back to the starting square, but it is rerouting into the game. Are these pawns overextended? Well, Magnus now goes bishop b5, adding defense, preparing knight b to d7 as well. We get a4, Magnus desperate to take on Poisson, bellow it out loud in his best French accent, but he restrains himself because you don't want to activate this knight to a3. So instead the bishop drops back. The pawns maintained like a phalanx there, foot soldiers defending all of these squares here. Now we see knight bd2, the rook defends the pawn, rook c1, it's critical pressure now, and so Magnus advances the pawn. We get b captures and these bishops come off the board. The castling right's ruined, but white wants to castle by hand. You often see these ideas in the Benko gambit as well, very similar themes. So knight bd7 from Magnus, he doesn't recapture the pawn, activate the white pieces. It's all about tempos and times here, absolutely fascinating. We get bishop takes on f6, bishop d4, also playable. Then Magnus would have likely checked. His whole position just hanging by a thread here. So interesting to watch him tiptoe this stuff. And now white to move, what to play, c4 an option, and white is 2 pawns ahead, but black with huge counterplay with this pawn. But captures was played instead, and now this next sequence is critical, because if you don't play the check, b5 and then rook takes on c1, which Magnus flicks in, winning this pawn now on a4, then you're getting steamrolled because these ones were so strong and connected, right? So g3 now from Vincent. Why didn't he defend his b pawn? You know, something like d6 is the top engine move. At least save the d pawn here, then go queen c4. This was a better line. The queen goes somewhere, right? Different game. Well, he instead goes for some king safety stuff, but Magnus now mops up the pawns here. The material's back level, but here the a pawn is running down the outside of the board, so it's more difficult for white to play. We get rook a1 coming in front of the pawn, but in the line of the sniper. Now queen takes on c4, knight recaptures, pawn under fire, so it advances here, but there's a move missed now by here Keimer. He makes a mistake, sorry, tripping over my words today, didn't get much sleep, because what he should do is something like knight d4 to block out the eyes of the bishop, but it's still a dangerous pawn which is running. But he plays a move, a mistake of knight b6, and this is Lawrence Trent reacting to the move.
Goes knight b6.
No.
because Magnus slams down on the board knight d5. Well done if you were able to find this tactic. What a move that is, opening this bishop on the rook here, and if you play your threat, which is what you were trying to do, then after takes here, this knight can't actually move out of the box, it's dominated, and the a pawn is simply running very fast. Trying to get this one back round in time just doesn't work. This is a sample line. Pawn is going to be going through, right? So this move was played instead. Rook takes on a4. The piece is ditched here because after knight takes on b6, the rook's now defended and what to do. Vincent keeps the pieces on the board, asks Magnus to show his technique because of course you can't let all the pawns get hoovered off the board here or the game would be headed for a draw. So we get many moves now. We're going to start rattling through. Vincent just maintains this structure over here. The 4-pawn clump. He wants to hold steady. Magnus slowly brings in his king. He's looking for a piece exchange if he possibly can. Vincent resisting. Few more moves on the board. The structure not touched. And we soon get to hear a critical moment because after this push, Magnus finds the very nice response of g4. We get this sequence, takes with check. Magnus gives up an entire pawn, but this is what he's seen. He can check, the king comes up, now a check here, winning this pawn, great calculation, because once the king marches in, this pawn can't go anywhere without being taken, this one will soon drop, and black can do it all the while protecting the f-pawn. So Vincent resigns, it's a lost game from here, and Magnus won in the afternoon, and then went on to play another version of this opening against Richie Rapport. We're jumping to that game now, and this is classic Magnus. He's now playing the white side of it, but guess what? He goes for a different variation with pawn h3, and as usual gets a great position out of the opening into the middle game. Doesn't matter which colour he's playing, this guy is the absolute GOAT. So Magnus going for this line with h3 and e4. None of this bishop f4, queen a4 stuff. Castles from Richie. Bishop e3. You're leaving this pawn tender, are you not? Well, knight d2 is the point. Protecting, but already developing the bishop. And now a6, a4 inserted to keep an eye on b5. And Richie plays a move which just takes you aback when you first see it. He sacrifices the knight on e4. Why the hell has he given a piece? Has he gone completely nuts? Well, this is the point. f5, and if you retreat the knight, back to the starting square, say, well, c3 square, then f4 comes and the bishop is pinned to the king. Black is doing well here, you're ripping open on the dark squares. So that's why Magnus just calmly develops. We get pawn recaptures. Knight c4, very classic square for the knight in these structures. You want to maybe go a5 one day and get a clamp here, and so Richie Rapport, he goes a5 instead. And you'll see the plan he's developing too, because after the d6 pawn is targeted, bishop f8, rook a3 from Magnus, classic attacking swing, we get knight to a6, one of the points of a5, and it's headed for the b4 square. Queen d2 now played after these moves inserted, and now here Richie creates a weakness with pawn b6, but he does have to get this rook into the game, so it's not such an easy position to play. This one therefore selected. Now we get rook g3, rook a7, preparing to support the defense here, and after h4 from Magnus, he turns up the pressure on the attack. Surely the queen can just take that pawn. Well, bishop g5 the point. The queen is trapped. Now it's not the end of the story because there's this e3 move can be flicked in. This is a sample line and you win an exchange. White doing well. So don't touch the pawn. Not good. Rook f7 instead played. Now we see bishop g5, bishop e7, the dark squared bishops flying off the board here, and Magnus goes h5. The b pawn also loose, but he wants to attack the king, save this pawn. Bishop f5 adds some defense around the king, and now Magnus goes bishop g4, getting another piece off the board. He is leaving the knight to hop to d3, but look at this. Richie just never finds time because the pawn is attacked and now he blunders. He plays rook g7 to defend, but should have gone rook f6, because from here it's a much more active defense on d6 and f6, and you pressure this square here, plus queen f7 is enabled to pressure d5 along with the knight. Still would have been game on. But this one played, and it's a terrible move. Magnus simply switches the attack with rook e1. What to do? Richie captures on g6. I mean, if we head back a move, the computer's saying queen f6, but still the e-pawn's dropping. So he desperately goes for this one, but Magnus simply takes, and the queen is forced to give itself up. Sure, you get two rooks here, but knight takes on d6, and the black king position is collapsing. Look how exposed it is. All the pawn cover gone. Rook e5 now played. Why not this one to go for the king? Well, you can block out the attack. h4, sure, fine, but queen e2, and white's getting in first. Big attack coming. That would be mate. If you give some room, still the big attack comes. Knight f5, hit the rook, something like this, sample line, and how about that for a tactic? Rook takes, drop this one. If you don't, then this one drops. Awful. So after this rook e5 move, not rook here to g4, we get f4 from Magnus, enticing the rook to capture, hit two pieces, but how about this tactic? The rook left the e-file. Now you're threatening mate in one, so there's no time to capture the knight. Therefore h6 played, but now queen e6 check, and Richard Rapport just resigns the game, right? Because if you go king h7, then there's many good moves, but knight e8 is one of them. Hitting this rook, threatening a massive check. The f-pawn's running, it then supports attacking ideas. You can chuck a check, but it does nothing. It's just game over. Magnus Carlsen winning with the Benoni, with black, and then with white. I've never seen a Benoni two times in one day in classical chess. Love to see it. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching. Smash subscribe to never miss a future video. And for another epic game, check out the video on screen.